Hello, I'm Toycat, and political beliefs are broad as they cover every aspect of how a country should or can be governed. So to simplify them, we created a system where they're all simply categorized as left or right. If you're curious as to how we arrived at those two values, it's not any of these things, although they're my personal favorites, but instead it comes from the early French Parliament when the radicals would sit on the left of the house while the ruling class would sit on the right. The ruling class obviously saw the benefit in maintaining the existing system, whereas the radicals see the benefit in burning everything down and starting again. This left-right spectrum idea is not just flimsy for its history, but also because it includes lots of different ideas together on the same side of the spectrum, despite the fact that people who oppose tyrannical government will probably oppose it in all different flavors, and obviously there are some ideas that wrap all the way around the political spectrum, leading to the widely hated horseshoe theory. Even worse for the usefulness of the spectrum is the fact that people can't even agree on what parties actually are. These are real comments from my video that I made literally just this week about the election results in the UK, and so why is it that you can't even make a basic comment like the Reform Party are right-wing or the Labour Party have moved closer to the centre without it being something critical? There are three big reasons as I see it, and let's talk about them today, starting with where even is the centre? Here is a political spectrum as most people understand it. As you move to the left of the centre, as you have ideas that value things like equality and fairness more than other things, you move from being slightly left of centre to far left as those ideas get more and more extreme, and as you go the other way, as your ideas get slightly more based around freedom or duty, you start to have ideas that are slightly conservative, slightly right of centre, and then you start to have ideas that are further to the right than that, down the path of libertarianism, or down the path of maybe fascism, that ideology from 1940s Italy you can't say in a video, but the idea is that, yeah, this is what the centre therefore is when you're in between both of those extremes, when you have ideas that don't perfectly mesh with conservative ideas, or if we have to use the US political term for this, the liberal ideas, if it doesn't perfectly mesh, then you end up somewhere in the centre. But there is one crucial flaw of this definition of the centre, and that is to say, are the right and left fixed in place forever? Is there a permanent most far left idea and a permanent most far right idea, or are both of those things actually changing? And if you argue that they are changing, as most people probably would, like communism or Trotskyism is not the most far left idea to some people. To some Trotskyists, you could argue like, well, there's a better way to do this. And so there is in fact a argument that both ends are kind of changing all the time, and so moderate centrism is also changing all the time. And so where actually is the centre? There's an argument, and one of my favourite ways to word this is Barack Obama a Tory? There's an argument that on a country-by-country basis, this spectrum changes. In a country that is already very far left, then right-wing ideas start to become things that are accepted as the norm elsewhere, and in countries that are slightly further right, as people often say the US is, ideas that are just accepted as centrist. It's a given in the UK that we have national healthcare. It's even the furthest right parties will dare not say that they want to get rid of it, but in the Americas, if you wanted to do the same thing, well, it would be a very liberal idea. It'd be an extremely radical liberal idea to do exactly the same thing. And so is it actually that those things are, is it actually a left of center idea to do something that is seen as moderatism elsewhere, or is it that the UK is over here or the US is over here? I think that's a messy question, but even more messy is the idea that it doesn't just change on a per country basis, because again, the answer to this, by the way, is like, well, Barack Obama does share a lot of policy positions with the British Conservative Party, but also he doesn't share a lot of them too. A lot of left-wing ideas are fixed in place, and a lot of them kind of change as people's opinions changes. This is often called the Overton window, and it basically posits that there is an acceptable range of centrist ideas. There are raising tax by 2% is a fair idea. It might be on the edge of popular. Lowering tax by 2% might be a fair idea on the edge of popular, but lowering taxes to 0 is going to be popular with some people, but other people are going to say, but how are we going to fund things like that healthcare that we love so much? And some people are going to say, wait, but don't we need defense spending? Similarly, if you say, no matter how great of an idea it is, no matter how backed up you think it is in your head, if you say, I think we should just nuke ourselves, I think we should just launch the missile up into space and bring it right back down, no matter how many people agree with that, in fact, wait, sorry, I should say, no one will agree with that. I think you can try and argue there's going to be a lot, but there's going to be an unthinkable idea, and you probably shouldn't do it, and it's outside of the Overton window, no matter how politically centrist you might feel like it is. You might argue that the only way to bring about the communist utopia, or even to bring about a fair moderate society, because we're such a hellhole capitalist society, is to nuke ourselves, and similarly, you might think we're in a socialist utopia, and the only way to bring about the true center is to nuke ourselves, but the actual center is defined as to what's acceptable to most people, you can argue. So which of these is correct? Does the center move on a per country basis? Does it move as people have different opinions? Or does it move, or is it fixed in place forever? The answer is there is no answer. Where is the center? It's where you say that it is. Which of these three beliefs basically depends on where you are. If you're a politician, you have to understand the Overton window, so you can maybe shift it your way, or understand that you need to have ideas that seem like they're somewhere in here. If you are someone who is on the internet arguing politics, you can make fun of another country by being like, well, you're so right-wing, left-wing, whatever. And if you are someone who has very, very extreme beliefs, you've just got to argue, yeah, really, given that the real center of politics is when we have just a regular socialist utopia and not a communist utopia, really it's just that everyone else has moved to the right, and one day people will move back. But I think the real space that exists is the fact that, yeah, the actual center is where the majority of the people are, maybe not in their opinion of like prospective policies, but I think the center is usually defined as the middle of where the voters are in a given democracy, and so I think it does change per country, and I think it does change over time, but those are just thoughts. I mean, a political spectrum is what you want it to be, which is why the second point here is, well, this is a dumb idea, right? To use a 1D spectrum even, when you could use a 2D spectrum. You've probably seen versions of this explaining authoritarianism and libertarianism, because there are economically right-wing countries like the United States, there are economically right-wing countries like Japan, and economically right-wing countries like Switzerland, all of which have such vastly different opinions on what that means. This is obviously an ethnically homogenous state. This is the opposite. This is a place that lets you have a gun because you have to serve in the military, so I wouldn't put it really on the bottom right, but they do believe in, you know, like free trade no matter what the consequence is, and sometimes those consequences come in gold bars. But the point here is to say, on the left wing, you've got countries like Sweden and countries like North Korea. One of those is largely more successful than the other, I think we can all agree, and even countries like China, where it's authoritarian, but not even, they claim to be communist, but it's not. They've let the free market so much into their world. So what do you actually take from this? Well, I think it's the fact that, yeah, it's changing per country, but also there are lots of ways to be right-wing and lots of ways to be left-wing. To just say that there is a 2D spectrum is dumb, because you can be on the far right of the spectrum because you believe in a zero-tax utopia, because you believe that we should all go back to the idea of trading willingly with each other, or you can be on the far right of the spectrum because you can believe that we have to actually empower the government to get rid of all the people you hate. You can be on the far left because you agree with the same, or you can be on the far left because you want to round up all the dissenters and put them in gulags. The fact that we just say it's left-right when those opinions are so different is something that is fixed with the political spectrum. So here is the political spectrum. It's put out by the Political Compass website for the UK election, and I just have to say, I love the idea, and these people are doing a good job on putting the idea that there is a libertarian, authoritarian axis out there. People love political compasses online, but they do such a bad job with it when they try to explain where the UK parties are. This is then the left-right problem, but transposed onto a third axis here. They argue that the Labour Party are a massively right-of-centre, massively authoritarian party, but somehow less authoritarian than the Conservative Party, who are then less authoritarian than Reform, but somehow more economically to the right. The Reform Party are obviously economically to the right of the Conservatives. I don't know what you would put them at authoritarianism-wise, but definitely not that far above. I don't understand any of how they arrive at these conclusions, unless they're trying to argue that Plaid Cymru and the SNP are the true centre. I just don't understand what's going on here. But the point here is to say that if you are on the left wing of the spectrum, you might like to vote for the Green Party if you believe in the let's be fun, right? The climate goals and the making the world work and you know, maybe fewer days a week sort of idea. Or you might like the Workers' Party if you think that actually we should mobilize the government, we should all work a little bit harder and use our government resources to do big authoritarian projects. They campaign on some pretty quirky crazy things that they should do, but maybe they should get involved in other countries, and we should really empower the government to not just affect our citizens, but people all around the world. That's how the opposite of the way that people from the Liberal Democrats might think, for example. They might believe that the government shouldn't be killing people, or the government shouldn't be, I don't know, criminalizing you for what you do in your spare time. But these are ideas that you might say on the other end, like on the authoritarian end. Yeah, if we allow society to degenerate, if we allow anyone to do whatever they want all the time, if we allow people to listen to TikToks on the train as they're just doing now, more and more commonly, let me go on my authoritarian axis. I've been too kind to libertarians in this video. I think that we should put everyone listening to TikTok on the train in a prison for several years, and we should just have TikTok blaring on all the screens around them and be like, oh, it's fine. You love doing this to other people, so you should love having this done to yourself. I think an eye for an eye, but for TikToks in public is my platform that I will campaign on. But the point here is to say that that would be an authoritarian position, and some people would say, nah, just let people, if people are listening to TikToks in public, leave them be. And that would be the defense of authoritarianism, whereas the reverse would be, well, I don't think that the state should have the power to kill people indiscriminately, and I think that what people do either in their own bedroom or in their own home or whatever, as long as it doesn't affect other people, it shouldn't affect their standing in society. But those are two very different beliefs that I will leave aside for now as we move to the third point, because the real reason that the center seems like it's moving, the real reason that we can't agree about where is the left wing, is the Labour, the reason that I think it's ridiculous to put the Labour in the pretty far right wing here, right? Like basically to the right. Almost as far right as the Conservative parties, which again, to put them far right, like do you not remember they raised taxes quite a bit during their tenure? There are all these ideas that are not economically right wing. They sold themselves as a tax and spend party. I think the reason that I and many others will disagree about are the Conservatives truly right wing, are the Labour Party left wing, is for electoral success. This is something I think I can simply put together in this meme that people love to use to justify why they're moving somewhere. This is a graph that shows that I am someone who is center left. At least in this graph I am. And if I am someone who is center left, and then the far left people, the fellow liberals, start moving further and further to the left and start saying that unless you're doing this, you're actually a right winger, then eventually I might accidentally become there. If my distance from the Conservative is a lot greater than my distance from the Liberal, but the Liberal moves to my left, have I actually moved to being on the right? Or the reverse version of this, if I am close to the Liberal and the Conservative, but the Conservative runs to the right, am I now accidentally far left? This is the silly argument that people put together, but it is one that kind of underpins electoral success. If there is a world where most people are in the center, then the parties realize that they're never truly going to be perfectly centrist in either messaging or in their overall policies. But the majority of people in the center need to feel like they're on the right side. And how do you do that? Well, you convince them that actually the real center is where their party is anyway, and the other party's gone super far left. Or if you're on the left of the spectrum, you get a lot of political points by saying, yeah, really, every party is a far right-wing party. The Labour Party is a far right-wing party. I think it's, if you say that, I think it's fair to say you're over here and you're in denial about it because you'd like to believe that you're over here. You'd like to believe you're just slightly left of centre, and this is something that the political parties are keen to take advantage of. I think that if every party had a clear and fixed position on the political spectrum, if this compass was objective, if there was any way to make it objective, let's say, and you could say, oh yeah, well I think I'm over here, and so I guess I'll look at the closest party, which I guess you'd be screwed if you were over here. The closest party, I'm going to vote for the Welsh Nationalists. If everyone were to do that, then there would be a big problem, and lots of parties can exploit the fact that where they are on the political spectrum is kind of vague. Sure, you vaguely know that Reform are the right-wing party, maybe, but if they were able to sell themselves as actually, no, we're the common sense party, everyone else has gone loony, then you'd be able to target a lot of Labour voters. For example, this is something which makes no sense on the left-right spectrum. Surely the Reform Party would be able to eat more votes from other right-wing parties, if not the Conservatives then the Lib Dems, but actually, no, the Lib Dems and the Conservatives are basically opposite parties, partially because they're so far apart on this axis. I don't agree with this, but let's say that partially because of that, let's say, but also let's say because of the fact that on the other side of the spectrum, it works too. If you are someone who is left-wing in the Green Party, you know, your vote share is limited kind of effectively. But if you say, yeah, on the climate, the biggest issue that matters, we are the only center party saying, let's solve the problem. We're in the middle of the Overton window saying, maybe the globe shouldn't burn, then you'll get a lot of votes that way. Using some issues where people are closer aligned with your party than others is a way to make it seem like your party is closer to where those voters are in general, something which gets very, very complicated. But the long story short here is electoral success will come from the party that's able to say that this is dumb, and this is dumb, and this is dumb, and that the only correct things are the things that they are saying, and that is why I think you should vote for my party, because I will effectively ban listening to TikToks in public. You know, I'm just gonna say, if you don't have headphones, and you don't have a mute button on your phone, then you don't get to watch the scrolling videos. I know that like a toddler, you wanna look all of those all the time, you wanna be constantly stimulated, but your stimulation doesn't come at a greater price, it doesn't come at a greater benefit to you than the cost to everyone else. And take a look around, take a brief second and see if anyone is enjoying this blaring of this bizarre video. I would be horrifically embarrassed, but the fact that you're not is why I am moving to the authoritarian. I don't know, I'll just vote for whoever does that. And that would make me someone who has a belief which is outside the Overton window, unless enough of you agree with it. But yeah, the point in this video is to say the reason we have huge disagreements about the political spectrum is because we don't agree on its size, we don't agree on its shape, we don't agree on where the parties are in it. We don't agree if the parties are moving away from us or if we are moving away from the parties. We don't agree if the spectrum is moving altogether and we are staying the same, or if we are staying the same and the spectrum is moving around us. We have no clue. It is just a simple idea and we put far too much weight on it. And so what is the solution? I don't actually have one here. What I can say is that the political spectrum is a neat idea that breaks down a little bit in practice, especially with multiple parties competing for the same space. But ultimately, I think that it's worth thinking about politics in more back to basics ideas than even this, because ultimately what we really define as a right of center idea doesn't come from the idea itself, in my opinion. It comes from the beliefs that you have to make it work. This is why you can have ideas which are actually quite left of center, but marketed by people from right-wing parties, or vice versa. The fact that, like I mentioned, we had a conservative party that believed in taxing more from people so they could spend it on public services. That was something they said towards the end was their key goal. The fact that you can say that, whether or not they actually did it, right? The fact that they can say that means that you can say left of center ideas, but with a right of center bias and right of center words, and people will believe it. And the fact that there are many people who do basically the opposite is proof that the political spectrum is a tool, and it's a tool that no one understands, which is something parties are very, very, very keen to exploit. I picked on this one example here, but obviously the same is true for basically the reverse side on all of the spectrum. Parties want to gain votes, and if they're good at their politics, then they will do precisely that. And that's something that's fun. Speaking of things, well, actually, let me prove a point. Random article. This is going to ruin my nicely put together video. But Keir Starmer, the UK has a left-wing Labour leader, and the United States has a left-wing government. Are they actually are they on the same side politically? Do they have shared beliefs, or is it a strained relationship? Ooh, it's really hard to say for sure, isn't it? Really hard to say for sure. I thought I'd find some political story in here, but it's all about the USA. It's all about the new Prime Minister going out and just talking to people. Okay, there we go. Beefing up standards watchdog rules. That is an increase in the power of government, so that is a left-wing idea, but I thought he was a centrist, or I thought that that's a fairly centrist idea, is he should be making more left-wing ones. The point is to say that you can campaign on whatever you feel like, and so this spectrum is dumb. It's just the best we've got if you're trying to explain something in 2 words or less. Thank you for watching. Hope you all enjoyed and found this video interesting, because I'll see you never. Second channel. Apparently care about this one, but otherwise, goodbye.